While everyone agrees that students and parents are better served when schools are open and learning is done in person, not everyone agrees on how to achieve and maintain that during an ever-evolving COVID pandemic. In this week's in-depth discussion, moderator Susan Goodell welcomes stakeholders who are impacted and involved in that challenge every day.
Hey, Rich, yes, as we dive into the first semester of 2022, we have a lot of questions, not only for our teachers, but for parents and what's going on with our schools as we hear news from around the nation and other parts of the country. So I'd like to introduce our panel to everyone right now. We have Catherine Bishop, who is president of the Oklahoma Education Association, which is a teachers union representing teachers and teacher experiences. Then we also have Deanna Dean, who is a parent of a student at Union Intermediate School, which is a high school in the Tulsa area. And that school went to remote virtual learning on Monday. And then we have, last but not least, Robbie Korth, an education reporter with our content partners at State Impact Oklahoma. Robbie has all the numbers and all the information we need to give us some perspective. I'd like to thank everyone for being with us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us on.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I want to start with you, Robbie. How many school districts have made the call as of now to do remote learning?
Yeah, so as of Wednesday afternoon, more than 100 Oklahoma school districts have pivoted to remote learning or just frankly closed. That represents roughly 20% of the total districts. And, this ranges from tiny districts with less than 200 students to, massive districts like with big closures, like in Union, where thousands of students are out of class. So it really runs the gambit, and it's affecting, thousands and thousands of kids all across the state.
Yeah, and Deanne, I want to come to you next. That affects parents as well, right? Are you affected by this?
I am, but fortunately my child is old enough that he can be at home alone. I feel for the younger students' parents who have to be at home. And sometimes I can work from home, so my schedule is pretty flexible.
All right, Catherine, I want to come to you because the teachers in these schools, what is the reason that they're talking about, or that you're hearing, or has a union had an input into decisions about remote learning here in Oklahoma?
Well, thanks for having us on today. And, from the very beginning of this school year, we had the Delta variant that was surging, and now we have Omicron that's surging. But during this whole time, we know there has been a massive, not only teacher shortage, but substitute shortage. And so when teachers and support professionals are getting the virus, we are still in a pandemic, and we have to recognize that. We have employees that are vaccinated, boosted, and they're still catching the virus. So when they're absent, we need substitutes to be able to cover those classes. And it has become, for many of the districts, a temporary necessity to move to distance learning because we don't have the capacity to, whether it's we don't have enough students there, there's a lack of students because they're also becoming infected, and a lack of educators that are in the schools.
Robbie, do you have any idea how thinly we are stretched on teachers? Is there any kind of way you can put that in perspective for us, maybe with past numbers or?
Yeah, it's difficult because we don't know really when a school announces that they're closing. They might not say how many, but I think there's some anecdotes that we can get into. So, for example, earlier this week, Capitol Hill High School here in Oklahoma City had roughly 24 teachers out in one day. And they were able to scramble and find substitutes for that one day, but then they had to close the following day. And, to manage that situation is really tough. I'm trying to remember the name of the district. There was a small district in southwest Oklahoma that on Monday of this week, they had 3% of their student body out with COVID. The following day, they had 47% of the student body out with some kind of illness. And so, things can just change so rapidly. It's it's about not having enough staffing. It's about not having that many kids in seats. And, at some point, schools are having to make these impossible decisions about diminishing returns. Like, are you really going to get that good of an education if, there's substitutes in every single classroom?
Deanna, do you want to tell us about your kiddo? What grade are they in?
He's in ninth grade, and actually, he is waiting on a test result because I had to take him to be tested yesterday because he was running a fever for the past couple of days. So he may have COVID right now. We're just waiting to hear.
So listen, when you look at this and the balance of trying to keep students safe from exposing one another to the remote learning decisions, what are you worried about? Not only the exposure, but how is your young man doing as far as staying up with educational standards?
It's been a challenge for him last year as well as this year. He doesn't get the engagement that he would get if he were in class, and he misses that. He enjoys having a day off here and there, but as most kids do. But he certainly misses the engagement. He misses the interaction with his teachers, the direct interaction. It is more of a challenge for sure.
Yeah, Catherine, how are teachers keeping up with this changing schedule? You don't know if you're going in, you don't know if you're not?
When I have talked to teachers around the state, the first thing that they will say, this has been the most difficult year of their career. And it hasn't changed. And so not only have educators been teaching in person, they've been also uploading assignments online for students that aren't able to be there in person. It is just and covering classes for the lack of substitutes. And so I have never seen districts work hard and harder to make sure that we're trying to minimize any disruptions for students learning. We have lived through 2 years of just a continual disruption, and it is daunting, and it is very difficult to deal with. And so when districts make these decisions, it's a well thought out decision. It is not a jump to, oh, let's just go this way. They are taking a lot of things into consideration.
So we've talked previously on InDepth about standardized test numbers post-COVID, post-quarantine. I'd like to ask you now, do the teachers, when they're talking, do they feel like it's a huge uphill battle to get students back on track to where they were pre-COVID?
It's going to take some time. We know there are situations where we've been able to have through formative assessments, we've been able to see gains and see progress. But we know that because of the disruption, not only academically, but also to their social emotional well-being as well. Being around other students, making sure they have those interactions, it affects the whole child. And so we are very cognizant of that, and districts are doing everything they can to make sure that any gaps that are happening, we're able to help provide the interventions for those.
Robbie, as you've been diving into this, what have you been seeing? I know we've talked to you before, certainly, about this. What have you been seeing since then? And do you have any concerns just as an Oklahoman?
Yeah, sure. It's very concerning. The closures we're seeing right now are like nothing. They're happening at a rate we've never seen before. I've been tracking this for the better part of 2 years, unfortunately. And just how fast closures are happening, how many people are out. It's not like anything we've seen. I think it's putting us really into survival mode. And I think it's putting educators into survival mode as they try to deal with, the most difficult part of the pandemic so far.
Are you saying there are more closures now than there were in, say, 2020?
Yeah, well, other than when all of the schools were closed in 2020 by the state, yes. Yeah, so since fall 2020, certainly, I think these are the most closures that we've seen, and it's almost always due to staffing issues. I don't think there's such a thing as a proactive closure before cases have gone into schools. I have not seen anything like that.
So let's talk about a mitigating circumstance here. And Catherine, I am going to come back to you really quickly on this. A mitigating circumstance before COVID, teachers wanted more pay in Oklahoma. So when you add an aggravating factor like this, all of this disruption, are some teachers leaving, retiring early? Are we seeing that happen?
Yeah, we saw a large retirement this last summer. We also see teachers throughout this whole entire year, teachers leaving their classroom, and not just beginning teachers, teachers that are veteran teachers. When we look at attracting more teachers into classrooms and into the field of education, into that teacher pipeline, it is about pay, about making sure that they're able to have a livable wage and a professional wage. Then when we go further up the scale of experience, it is about respect, about autonomy, making sure they have the resources and the supports that they need to continue teaching in the field of education.
Deanna, I think you're going to be the touchstone for this next question. How important is a good teacher to a student?
Oh, that's the key to success for any child, is to have a great teacher who can connect with the kids. And fortunately, Union has a lot of great teachers, and all my kids have been blessed by the teachers at Union.
Have you had a chance to see any of the online learning as it's happening in your house with your son?
Yes, yeah, I've peeked in on some of his Zoom calls, and it's different. But they're very tech savvy, so they pull it off.
What do we see for the future? And Robbie, let's go back to you on this. Everyone's saying expect the winter spike. I don't know about the temperatures in Oklahoma. They haven't gotten too cold except for a little bit, but are we expecting that in Oklahoma?
I think we're living through it right now. At least I hope we are. The one silver lining to all these closures might be that many of them are only for a few days this time around. And, we'll see next week. Will they continue? Will they not? Fingers crossed they all come into school next week after Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and classes continue as normal. I mean, I wouldn't bet on it. There will obviously be hiccups, but hopefully we see an improvement, and this is the worst of it. I am a little optimistic about that.
Catherine, is the teachers union, since it seems to be peace and harmony here in Oklahoma when it comes to education, the teachers unions and our governmental entities and decision making, how strong is the push to get teachers in the classroom versus the desire to keep them safe? Are you guys still walking a tightrope there, or do you see that loosening up in the future?
Yeah. Well, if you would have asked me yesterday, I probably would have said something totally different. But when I say educate, let me just put it this way. Educators, teachers, support professionals, administrators are working so hard every day, and they just want to make sure that they have a safe working environment to come to, that their students have a safe learning environment to be in. We know the importance of face-to-face, to be in a classroom face-to-face. We know that, but we also know when there's time that there's not capacity, and we're going to have to move to a virtual environment. And it should be short, and it should be temporary, like we've been talking about, and then come back. There has been so much political divisiveness, and we need to get back to that good of the whole to take care of this so we can get out of this.
I know we're getting close to time, but I do want to ask one last question. Deanna, I'm going to put this to you. What would you like to see ideally for your son in the next year?
Well, not just for my son, but for all of the kids. I'd love to see the numbers go down so that we can get back to a sense of normalcy and getting back to in-person learning, where people are not having to worry so much about whether they have to wear a mask, whether they're getting germs passed that are going to pull them out of school and put them in the hospital. That'd be my dream, is for COVID to be completely eradicated.
Yeah, I'd say would agree. We want our children to have a normal school experience, to be well and happy, and get back to bugging each other in person. That'd be great.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I would like to thank all of you for your time and for your insight. I know we'll be back hearing from you again soon as we get some updates on how things are going in Oklahoma's education system amid this very unusual period of time. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.